Hello and welcome to Crypto Weeklies. In this video, we talk about MicroStrategy, which is a proxy for Bitcoin. Most of their business is related to Bitcoin holding. None of the content is financial advice. Right now, the price of MSTR is at around $126. It has come crashing down quite a bit since they had their initial bull run late November 2024, when the price of MSTR was at that point at around, roughly speaking, $550. Now the drop from that level has been at around 77%. A 77% drop from peak to bottom was what Bitcoin did in 2021, from the 2021 bull run to the 2022 bear market. So if you go over here, this is MSTR at a weekly level. Instead of looking at the longer term moving averages, this looks at the Fibonacci levels of key interest. So MicroStrategy is now at the previous all-time high. The price of MSTR is at around $126. The previous all-time high, that is in 2021, what MSTR achieved in that first bull run since they started buying Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They started buying in August 2020. Bitcoin peaked in November 2021, whereas MicroStrategy peaked in that bull run in February 2021. This time around, Bitcoin peaked in October 2025, whereas MicroStrategy peaked almost a year earlier in November 2024. There was a secondary peak in July. Even if you include that peak, it was much lower than the previous peak. Still, that peak came in almost 3 to 4 months before the Bitcoin's peak eventually in October 2025. Since then, price has dropped quite a bit. Now it is very close to the previous all-time high, the 2021 all-time high. You can see in terms of the monthly candles over here. This is the 2021 February high, and now the price action has come crashing down. Also, this drop coincides, the 77% drop. I will just briefly show that in terms of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's drop in 2021, from the 2021 high to the 2022 low. So Bitcoin dropped from the 2021 high over here, which was in November 2021, to the December 2022 drop. The percent drop was at around 77%. Now that MicroStrategy has dropped 77%, this drop also coincides MicroStrategy going below the 200-week simple moving average. Bitcoin right now is nowhere close to the 200-week simple moving average. Almost $20,000 difference between the price action and the 200-week. We can see over here, instead of monthly candles, if we convert into the weekly candles and then add up the 200, you will find that Bitcoin 200-week simple moving average right now is coming in at around $57,000. There is almost a air gap of about $15,000 to $16,000 between the current price and the 200-week simple moving average, whereas MSTR has already fallen below the 200-week. What happened in the last bear market is when MicroStrategy fell below the 200-week. Back then, the 200-week simple moving average was at around $30. The price did have a floor at around $13. So the drop from the 200-week simple moving average, again, it's not an easy market by any stretch of the imagination. The drop from that 200-week simple moving average to the eventual low was another 50-55% drop. Again, with from cycle to cycle, if the hypothesis is that instead of a 55% drop from that 200-week, let's say this time around, as the volatility gets diminished to the downside, especially with Bitcoin again being largely getting adopted and MSTR being exclusively now a Bitcoin related company, the price growth, again, if you see from $9 to $130, there was a 13x. Even similar return were again observed in this, from this 2023 drop to from $13 to a more than 30x gain from that level to the almost $560 level. So if you compare the performance from this low to this high, it was at around almost 4,000%. Similar story over here from this drop till this high at around 1,400%. So this time around price action did much better, almost 3x better than the 2021 bottom to peak volatility for MSTR. So there is always a chance that because MicroStrategy rallied so much in the bull run, it has much further downside. But let's keep that 55% as a static drop from the 200-week simple moving average. If that kind of manifests, 55% from here, from the 200-week simple moving average, is at around $67. So that's about, again, slightly at around $67 would be slightly less than a half drop from here. That's because we are not at the 200-week, we are below 200-week simple moving average. The 200-week simple moving average is at around $146. Price is much lower than that. So from here, if the price were to drop to that $67 level, that's a drop of about 45%. That's one scenario. If that's the bear case scenario for MSTR. If let's say there is somewhat of a diminished volatility to the downside, and let's say if the price action were to go to that 45 to 47% drop from the 200-week simple moving average, price action could go to that November 2021 high of MSTR, which was at around $78, $79. That's always in on the cards. So the drop between $85 and $65 could be a bear market range for MSTR, depending on how MSTR bottoms. Again, the bottom for MSTR occurred much earlier than when Bitcoin bottomed. MSTR dropped in May 2022. One could argue that there was a secondary drop, but Bitcoin bottomed for that bear market in November-December 2022 time period. So MSTR is kind of leading Bitcoin, tops before Bitcoin, bottoms before Bitcoin. So let's say if Bitcoin were to top in the later half of 2026, it's always possibility that MSTR drops in the first half of 2026, even in the second quarter or even late first quarter of 2026, which is about 1.5 months away from here. That's why focusing on MSTR as requested by the community. Coming back to our own website, interpreting what the drop of MSTR could look like in the next 6 months if there is a non-panic bear market ahead of us in the next 6 months. MSTR could drop from the current price to about $85 at a weekly average. This is using price action trend on the weekly model since they started buying Bitcoin on their balance sheet in August 2020 using seasonal ARIMA and standard deviation based confidence level. So that's the bear case for MSTR. If there is a counter trend rally, price action at a base case level could go as high as about $188. Anything above that would require a significant change in the market structure. So that's the range, and you can see from week to week what is the one standard deviation bottom for each week and the overall trajectory. If there is much more panic to the downside, let's say if there is a full-blown panic case in May 2025, the worst MicroStrategy could do, if let's say 4 to 5 months of panic is ahead of us instead of a full-blown 6 months of panic, the support level in that scenario is at around $50. So price action could go as low as about $50, which is kind of a worst case scenario for MSTR. That would be again a $50 drop to $50 is again much lower drop than the 2022 drop from the 200-week simple moving average, which lasted only about 55%. But again, as we saw that the gains that MSTR had in 2024-2025 period were 3x the gains that MSTR had from 2020 to 2021 period. So again, there is always a possibility with the asset rallying more than its previous cycle, the drops could also be more severe. So that's the worst case scenario for MSTR, drop to $50. That's also confirmed by that that analysis from cycle to cycle, as well as the machine learning based price forecast for MSTR. Largely speaking, the current levels for price action again are in terms of the regression based risk. The regression based model still thinks that the price action has more likelihood of going up with time than down with time. And again, no one could blame this model. Again, this is a statistical model which looks at the price action since they started buying Bitcoin at a daily level, and it's color coded based on the proportional distance between the price and the regression based fair value. The cooler colors such as purple and blue indicate that risk levels have cooled off. The warmer color indicate the risks are kind of magnified. This model did identify the November 2024 peak when the risk levels were at around 100%. So right now the price action again has been lower than not just the regression based fair value, but also the dotted one standard deviation residual applied to it. Whenever again the price is below this dotted green line, it's usually a good indication that the price is close to bottoming. So that's again, but the slope of the regression function is what worries me. Although the price action has gone down quite a bit, the slope of the regression function is indicating something which might not be the reality for 2026, where the bottom regression function has to grow with time in the next 6 months. So that's why again this is one of the indicator. No single model can be right the entire time. That's why confluence amongst several different models makes more sense than just one model. But nonetheless, right now we are looking at the bottoming analysis, and this model, like the 200-week simple moving average, has triggered a bottoming signal. Yet, as mentioned previously, the price action again, not in the last bear market, not just went below the 200-week, but also went below the 300-week. We have for MicroStrategy again, we haven't seen the drop to the 300-week simple moving average, the green line over here. And from that point, also the price action in the last market cycle bottomed at around 40 to 45%. Right now, the 300-week simple moving average for MSTR is at around $112, almost $15 lower than the current price. And if from that point again, if you look at from that point and if say that price action bottoms exactly at around 47% from the 300-week simple moving average, that takes the price action bottom for MSTR in 2026 at around $60. So a drop below the 300-week moving average might be on the cards in, let's say, mid to late 2026 if there is a counter trend rally. If not, again, this drop again, if there is some prolonged bearishness, like in the last time, where whenever the price action went below the 200-week simple moving average, 300-week was only a week away. So the drop between 200-week and 300-week SMA did not take much longer. So this something similar could also happen. And again, as and if and when the price action goes below the white line over here, that's the line in sand. Just personally speaking, where DCA makes some sort of a sense above, below $75 level for MSTR. All in all, again, as we look forward to MSTR, again, it's always better to look in terms of a longer term model. What could price do in 2029 per this bull case model says that again, if 2029 is a bullish year like it was in 2024-2025 period, price action could go to $350 in 2033 at around 530, in 2037 at around 800, and in 2041 at around 1200. That's about a 10x of the current price. That's the bull case. The uber bull case for MSTR would be slightly more growth to the upside and this slightly more drops to the downside. Again, trajectory would be slightly different, but the end result would be more or less the same, where the the drops in the bear market are much severe, and the rallies in the bull market are also uh, more positive to the upside. That's the uber bull case, where price action grows in the non-bear markets by 55% and declines in the bear market by 60%, rather than growing by 45% and declining by 50%. That's how these models are calculated. They are just compound annual growth based models. Not much statistics over there. All in all, again, MicroStrategy and its bottom depend largely on what Bitcoin is doing in terms of its own fair value. Right now, Bitcoin has dropped below the fair value per hour regression based model, but it still has a long way to go depending on how it bottoms. Again, that one could argue that the difference between the price and the fair value to the upside was minimal in compared to the 2021 rally in 2024-2025. That could mean that the distance between uh, the drop and the fair value could also be somewhat mitigated, and the drop for Bitcoin could be close enough to 50k this time around. And when that happens again, usually MSTR leads, but again it requires at least one major drop in Bitcoin's price for MSTR to bottom. That hasn't happened yet. Looking forward to that. None of the content financial advice. If you enjoyed this content, and you can check out all of these charts on cryptoweeklies.com. If you did, please give a like and subscribe, and hope to see you again tomorrow. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye bye.